Kyonok is a very handsome boy who has grown up with a deep trauma. When he was a child, his father became very famous and left home, leaving his mother, who was an ordinary woman, for a celebrity who had him. All of this caused Kyonok to be rather unexpressive. No matter what situation he was in, he couldn't express an emotion. He couldn't smile or even get angry. One day after work, he meets Johan, a guy who is the complete opposite of him. Outgoing and very cheerful, who isn't afraid to make a fool of himself in public. When he saw that they had the same taste in music, Johan accepts him as his best friend and decides to invite him to a party with the prettiest girls from work. But he turns down the invitation because he has to feed his cat. This makes his friend very curious about him, because he thinks he has some kind of disorder that prevents him from feeling or expressing emotions. But Kyonok tells him that's not the case, that he's a completely normal person. It's just that nothing sparks his interest. But later, while exploring the storage room, he comes across a very disheveled girl who looks almost like a ghost. When he sees her, he's not scared, but that girl piques his interest, so he asks his friend if he knows who she is. Johan tells him that she's known as the dinosaur and that she's a social outcast, because even though she got an excellent score in the job interview, she doesn't really dress up much, and also, no, her social skills are really bad. That's why her bosses don't know where to send her, and she ended up in the warehouse where no one can see her. This makes Kyonok even more interested in her, so much so that he starts following her and can't take his eyes off her. Also, every time he sees her, he can't help but smile. This confuses his best friend, and he asks if he likes her. Kyonok says no, that he's only interested because he feels sorry for her. Johan confronts him and tells him he's trash, because a guy as handsome as him can't be nice to her just out of pity. That's why he asks him to just ignore her, like everyone else does. The next day, when he sees how her classmates mistreat her, Kyonok decides to help her, but at first he's a bit cold to avoid any misunderstandings. But after work, there was a piano concert. There, Kyonok discovers that Miyeon is actually quite cultured, but because of her appearance, no one takes the time to find that out. Kyonok does more than just think about her. Because of that, he wants to get closer to know her better. But Miyeon, seeing how his classmates make fun of him, decides to ignore him out of fear, and it's scary that he might become an outcast like her. Seeing this, Johan tells his friend no, that it's better to give up. But at night, it's Johan who brings them together so they can talk without anyone bothering them. Seeing his friend's interest, he gives him tips to make sure his date is a complete success. Kyonok doesn't listen to him and starts telling Miyeon that he's working just to save money so he can go to Iceland to see the Northern Lights. He also tells her that his passion was always modern dance, but he gave it up, and now he doesn't think he can continue because of his job. Miyeon tells him not to see it as giving up, but to see it as a pause, like the Native Americans used to do. They would stop before reaching their destination. Not to rest or to let their horse rest, but to look back at the whole path they had traveled. Kyonok is fascinated by Miyeon's reflection and tells her it's very nice. Miyeon doesn't know how to respond and just stays silent. Seeing that the conversation isn't flowing, Johan has to step in so that their date doesn't end that way. That's how the three of them become friends. Later, Kyonok walks Miyeon home. This makes her start to smile a little, but because of her own insecurities, she didn't know how to act, since no one had ever been so kind to her before. Even so, she just wants to go with the flow, but one of the popular girls tells her not to try so hard when leaving work. It was raining, and Kyonok wants to walk Miyeon home because her umbrella had been stolen. She tells him it's not necessary since she's used to those kinds of things happening to her. But Kyonok tells her it shouldn't be that way, that she should fight back and stand up for herself a little. When it stops raining, he invites her to a very special place. When she sees that it's not a motel area, Miyeon thinks he wants to fool around, but in reality, he just wanted to take her to his favorite record store. There, they discover that they have even more things in common. Then, they listen to a song that both of them really like, and that would become their first song. Later, Kyonok asks her for her phone number, but she tells him she doesn't have one. That since no one talks to her, she doesn't need one. Kyonok tells her that he understands and gives her a band-aid for her wound. She doesn't know how to feel and asks him why he's so kind to her. Kyonok answers her that there's no specific reason, and that if she doesn't know how to act, she can simply be kind. Also, the next day, Miyeon prepares lunch for Kyonok, which makes his best friend excited. While she's talking to him, Kyonok says he doesn't have anything, and Kyonok tells her to see. She has nothing to do with it. Later, Kyonok realizes she didn't have a phone. With this, they both start getting closer and closer. But are the popular girls happy about that? So that they don't get suspicious. Johan tells them that they are just cousins, but the girls know that Kyonok is in love with someone, so they ask him who it is. He starts describing how wonderful Miyeon is, but before he can say her name, Johan kisses him to make him stop talking, and he tells everyone that they are dating. Days later, Miyeon doesn't go to work and Kyonok feels very sad. Johan, for his part, has to pretend that they are a couple so the girls don't suspect when Miyeon arrives at night. After her rehearsal, Kyonok sees couples and feels sad. Miyeon, for her part, has to pretend to be a couple with Johan so the girls aren't so sad. Suddenly, Miyeon calls her. She apologizes to him for leaving without saying anything. Hearing her voice, Kyonok breaks down and starts crying uncontrollably. Miyeon can't stand it and tells her that she will go see her immediately. After running for a long time, they finally meet and both spend the whole night talking. Days later, Kyonok tells her that before meeting her, he felt alone, that he thought he was the only genuine person in a world full of fakes. But after giving up his passion, he thought he became one of them. But being with her, he's sure that the two of them are genuine. That's why he likes her, and finally he confesses his feelings to her. She doesn't know what to say because she's never been in a situation like this before, but in the end, she tells him that she likes him too. But because they used the work radios, everyone had found out. Some were excited and happy for them, but others just teased them. Although Miyeon was no longer willing to just put up with their bad treatment. That's why, for the first time, she lifts her head and stands up for herself. At night, seeing that Kyonok was feeling down, she tells him not to worry, that what their classmates say doesn't affect her anymore. Then, since it was still early, they work up a sweat for a while, playing badminton for hours. At the same time, Johan, who was always surrounded by people, shows us that despite being a very sociable and lively guy, he was actually a very lonely man. Deep down, he felt lonely, and he really didn't like that at all. A few days later, we see that Kyonok and Miyeon made him a birthday cake. This is something new for him, since no one besides his mother had ever celebrated his birthday. After that, the three of them talk about their dreams. Johan wants to write a successful novel. Miyeon wants to be a modern teacher and be surrounded by many children. And Kyonok wants to go to Iceland to see the northern lights with Miyeon. At the end of the party, the three say goodbye because now Kyonok is going to take dance classes at a school in another city. Johan, on his part, is having problems with his sisters. They ask him to leave the country so he won't worry their father. This makes Johan very depressed, and he tries to contact his best friend, but he doesn't answer. Because of this, he tries to seek help from Miyeon, but she doesn't answer either because she was working. In the early morning, the store owner tells him to leave because it's already very late. This makes him feel completely alone and that nobody cares about him. So he decides to take his own life. For better or worse, he managed to survive. Kyonok and Miyeon felt very bad. But as the days went by, they had to continue with their lives. Sometime later, Kyonok invites Miyeon to a gathering with her friends. She was so excited that she starts putting on makeup during the meeting. Everything goes well, they drink and have a lot of fun. When it's over, Kyonok is drunk and asks Miyeon to go to his house. After that, days went by and he didn't hear anything more from her. Because of that, he decides to go look for her, but she had moved away and nobody knew much about her. So he didn't have a single clue. The next night, Miyeon receives a letter. In it, Miyeon apologizes for disappearing without saying anything. She tells him that before meeting him, her world was in complete darkness, but he appeared like a bright light that came to illuminate her whole world. That's why she was very grateful to him, because he made her feel very valuable, and she was very happy every moment she spent with him. It was for that same reason that Miyeon decided to leave. She had fallen madly in love with him and didn't want to ruin their relationship. She left because she wanted to keep only the good memories. She was afraid that over time she would end up getting hurt, or on the contrary, that she would hurt him. Over time, Kyonok accepts it and goes back to work at the mall, returning to the same life she had when she met Miyeon. But now Johan and Miyeon were gone, so she had more time to get to know other people. After going out partying, she goes back to the record store she went to with Miyeon, And there she hears the first song they listened to together. This makes Kyonok realize that he was really in love with Miyeon, which is why he can't help but cry when he remembers her. He also remembers his best friend. Now the roles had reversed. Johan was the one who could no longer show emotions. No matter how much Kyonok tried to cheer him up, he seemed to have lost the will to live. A few days later, one of the popular girls gets him Miyeon's address. This makes Kyonok write her a letter. He tells her that on December 24th, he will be waiting for her at the bus stop near her house. She is not obligated to come. He will simply wait for her there until dawn when the day finally arrives. There was a roadblock on the way. Because of this, Kyonok was forced to run. He runs and runs for many hours until he finally arrives at the bus stop. Luckily for him, Miyeon was waiting for him. Then they both go to eat. And when they finish, Kyonok asks Miyeon to dance for the first time. The dance ends with a strong hug. Later, the last bus leaves and they both say goodbye without anything else, but Kyonok didn't want to leave just like that, nothing more. That's why he gets off and tells Miyeon that he loves her, that he can't live without her. Miyeon also confesses that she loves him. That's why they agree to meet on December 31st, go to a fair, and then a concert to celebrate the new year. After sharing a passionate kiss, Kyonok leaves as the happiest man in the world. When December 31st finally arrives, Miyeon waits for Kyonok for hours, but he never shows up. A long time later, we see that Johan had recovered. And not only that, he had fulfilled his dream. He wrote a very successful novel in which he tells how he met his friends and how they helped him find the strength to keep living. Miyeon also achieved her dream. She was now a teacher and was surrounded by many children. When she reads her friend's story, she tells him that it's very beautiful because it has a very happy ending. At the end of his story, Kyonok suffered an accident that left him in a coma and prevented him from going to his date with Miyeon. Also, due to the strong impact, he lost his memory, but when he saw Miyeon at a piano concert, his love made his memory return. And that's how he was also able to fulfill his dream. The two of them traveled together to Iceland and were able to see the Northern Lights, but that ending was only in the novel. Reality was much harsher. Kyonok survived the accident, but Johan wrote that ending because he hoped that his best friend had just gotten off the horse and was waiting for them somewhere. When they die, the three of them will be able to be together again. That's how this beautiful but sad story ends. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the ending. I was moved by this story, but I prefer the ending of the novel because it's a happy ending. Thank you very much for watching the video until the end. I hope you enjoyed this summary. Don't forget to give me a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. See you in the next story.